All right, so joining us now is Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio, ESPN Radio, does the NFL preview show. I was listening to you and Myron on Sunday leading up to the games. I was in my car, but I want to especially talk to you here, Matt, not just about NFL, but you and I, one of the things we have in common, we both love pro wrestling. And I was super excited when I found out when you were co-hosting with Amber Wilson, I don't know, like a year ago. And I learned, you told me that you actually own the very famous OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling, which, of course, you had very famous WWE superstars come up out of that system. You're an owner now, and you guys are the subject of a new documentary, which is being released on Netflix on Wednesday. That's wild. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm great. And yes, all of what you said is true. I am a part owner, along with another person, of OVW, and we have a show called Wrestlers coming out on Netflix. It is Wednesday, and they filmed it last year, and it is a nerve-wracking time around here because after 4 months of cameras following us around, we'll finally see. I still haven't even seen it, so we'll finally see what they ended up showing.
Right. So you and I co-hosted with you a couple weeks ago on ESPN. I think the day that the news came out, or like the day after the press release came out, and I had asked you, have you seen any of the episodes? You had told me no, they won't show them to you before they come out. So on Wednesday, when it comes out, like what's the plan? Do you have friends coming over? What's the deal?
I'm going to skip my radio show that morning because I just felt like if I went, I would just be wanting to watch the show. So I'm skipping my radio show, and I'm just going to watch all the episodes. You know, we had a lot of press in town here Saturday. We did a show Saturday night, and Netflix brought a lot of critics here to sort of so they could see a live show and meet a lot of the wrestlers. And you know, it's exciting. I mean, Al Snow, some of your listeners will remember him from his wrestling days. He runs the wrestling for us. I am one of the owners. We have a lot of wrestlers that are here, and we're all going to be featured on it. I'm kind of, I think, going to be a little bit of the villain because I'm the outsider who comes in to try to turn the company around. But you know, it's been a great experience. I've been part of it for 3 years now. When I came in, the place was about to close. I mean, it was kind of on its last legs. And, you know, we've gotten a lot of stuff accomplished. We still are not making money, but, you know, having a Netflix documentary is not too bad. And hopefully that helps us turn the place around.
So you're going to watch it by yourself?
I have to. Yeah. I mean, we were going to do this premiere here in Kentucky. We're going to have like a red carpet premiere. And then the folks from Netflix were like, you know, Matt, the first episode isn't the best for you. It's like, it gets better later, but maybe you don't want to invite all your friends to come on the first episode and then walk out afterwards. So we decided not to do that, but I'm going to watch it by myself. It's 7 hours, right? It's 7 1-hour episodes. So I think I got to get through it before I can watch it with other people.
The show is called Wrestlers. It debuts this Wednesday on Netflix. Are all 7 episodes out at once?
Yeah, they are. And it's basically a documentary about what it's like to be at wrestling at the small level. And there's 2 things I think people will like. Let's say you like wrestling. Okay, this shows what it's exactly like behind the scenes. I don't really know that any company's ever done that before. You know, you know this. Anytime wrestling shows you behind the scenes, they're actually showing you what they want to show you, right? We gave total control over to the director, Greg Whiteley. He did Last Chance U. He did Cheers. So many of you have seen that show from him. And then secondly, let's say you don't like wrestling. It's a really human story of people trying to pursue their dreams, working at the smallest level to try to make it. And then it's also a story about people trying to turn a business around. You know, COVID really hit this business and this industry hard. And so how do you turn it around? How do you try to take something that's dying and try to make it work? So I think there's a lot of levels where people will like it. And what's interesting to me is, you know, women are not necessarily the biggest fans of wrestling in general. That's a generalization. Some are. But I found women seem to like this series as much, if not more than men, because of the human drama and relationships in it.
Can you explain what got you to decide to purchase your share in OVW?
Insanity, probably. I owned a website, KentuckySportsRadio.com, and I sold it at the end of 2020. And so I was trying to figure out kind of what was the next thing I was going to do in life. I had built that for 14 years before I sold it. And so I thought, okay, what's besides my daily radio show, what else am I going to do? Because I sort of have a entrepreneurial attitude. And this came open like 2 weeks later. We heard that there was a chance the company could close and they needed an infusion of cash. And so we thought, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And as you'll see in the documentary, it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Wrestling is a very closed industry. I think they saw me and Craig, but especially me, as an outsider. There's a kind of a belief, if you've never been in the ring, you don't understand it. And so dealing with that is a big part of trying to manage the business and make it work.
Did you notice the cameras when they were around you all the time? Like, how was that?
You do it first. I mean, at first it's, you notice, but then you forget. I mean, I know that sounds strange, but you do. I mean, there came a point that I would walk out of my house and go into the ring, and then there'd just be a camera on me the whole time, and there'd be a microphone on me the whole time. And you forget. You really do. I mean, the first week or so, the only time it was weird is I hosted ESPN Radio one time, and there was just a camera crew in my house for 8 hours with me by myself. And like, they were like, just live your normal life. And it's hard to have like 7 people in your home and you're not supposed to act like any of them are there. That was really the only time it was strange. But besides that, it was pretty normal, honestly.
Now, as the promoter, as the owner, I'm sure there are uncomfortable conversations that have to be had with either you and the head trainer, which is Al Snow, or you and the wrestlers. Did you ever have to turn to the camera crew and say, hey, we need a little privacy?
I did not, and I don't think that ever happened. I mean, I did not. We took the view. I mean, Greg Whiteley is, he's won Emmys for Cheer and Last Chance U. And I think a big part of him agreeing to do this was they sort of got to see everything. And I also understood how important that would be to the show. I mean, if you take away the most dramatic moments, why in the world would they be there, right? So I think, I try not to get involved a ton with the wrestling part and the wrestlers. I mean, there's some of that. But a lot of mine is with Al and sort of disagreements about business. Al's a wrestling guy. He bleeds wrestling. He loves wrestling. I'm trying to make so Al's weakness, I think, in some ways is business. I think my strength is business. Probably my weakness is wrestling. And so that constant dynamic of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth is something that you see, I think, playing out during the show.
OVW, for people who don't know, has had some of the biggest names in the history of pro wrestling go through there.
Yeah, I mean, you had John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, Batista, CM Punk, The Miz. Now, that's all true. It's a little misleading, though, because those were all guys that were here. The WWE used to basically send all their talent here to learn to wrestle. I would argue maybe something like that should still exist for these organizations. But then the WWE created its own thing called NXT, which is down there in Florida with you. And we kind of became independent. And that was about 8 or 10 years ago. And that's when the company started sort of going downhill. And so this is an attempt to rescue. I mean, wrestling's been big in Louisville, Kentucky for 50 years. OVW's existed for 30 years. And this is kind of an attempt to try to save it and get it back to its heyday when those guys we just talked about were in it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it, man. I think it's going to be really cool. So again, Wrestlers debuts all 7 episodes, like Matt said there, this Wednesday on Netflix. And I think you're probably right for people who aren't into wrestling or people who love pro wrestling like myself. And then I have my wife who does not have time for pro wrestling. We've sat down. We watched the show, not the real show, the mock show on Netflix, Glow.
The trailer, yeah. Glow. She liked Glow. Okay.
Yeah, with Mark Maron and what's her name? Allison Brie, I think. And she loved it. It's a show, it's wrestling, but it's not really about wrestling. She loved it. So I think a show like this, while it's a documentary, it's for real. I think there's probably some of that because you see, what all these characters, what they're about and what they're trying to get in this.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, I actually think wrestling fans will probably be the ones that get frustrated with it the most because they're going to go, you know how wrestling fans are. They get they critique everything, and I actually think the people who don't watch wrestling are going to be the most fascinated by it. You know, the things
wrestling fans hate wrestling.
Yeah, they do. And the draw, you know, OVW especially, we're kind of an old school wrestling philosophy. And they don't like that either. But I think here's the thing that I think nobody has ever seen that I know. No wrestling company has said you can come everywhere, right? You can come to the writers' meetings. You can come for the backstage real life fights. You can come into these people's homes. I don't think that's ever happened without the company being able to edit it. But look, I'm the owner of the company. I came up with the idea of the show. I pitched it and sold it to BBC. I still haven't even seen the show. So that should tell you how serious they are about the documentary side of this. They said, Matt, if you're in it, which we want you to be in it because you're the owner, you can't see it. And so I haven't seen it, and I will see it at the same time everybody else does.
I'm very much looking forward to it. Wednesday, Netflix, 7 episodes, wrestlers, Matt Jones, owner, co-owner, promoter, OVW, and of course, Kentucky Sports Radio and ESPN Radio, NFL preview show. So let's do a little bit of that here, Matt. Was the game of the day on Sunday, was it definitely Dolphins-Chargers?
Well, I knew you would say it was. No, it was. It was the most exciting. I mean, Tyreek Hill was amazing. I think actually he's the story of week one in a lot of ways. I thought it was great to see Tua play well. I thought it was great. It was such an offensive shootout that you assumed when they missed that extra point that the Chargers would come down and then probably win the game on a field goal, or at least have a field goal and maybe choke it on it. But no, instead they held them. I thought that was really, really impressive. And I thought it was if you're a Dolphins fan, you got to love it. I mean, it worked out perfectly. You get the Patriots losing, you win. And then I think for the Dolphins, to me, the story of the night are the Cowboys and the 49ers. But then I think the second story of the weekend is probably the Dolphins, because that was a great game and a great win. What's your thoughts on Tua? I love him as a player. I always did. And I thought he would be good in the NFL. The thing that's tough about Tua is you don't know with the concussion stuff, are they going to be understandably so overly careful that like things that wouldn't keep other people out might keep him out? You guys locally there, I'm sure, know more about that than I do. But I do love him as a player, and I think he's a top 10 quarterback. But the thing you got is those weapons with Hill and Waddle. I mean, they're just so explosive. It felt like Tyreek Hill could get open anytime he wants. He's such a tough guy. He was on my fantasy team, so I love that he got about 1 million points during the thing. But they're exciting. I mean, the NFC is so good. Like, it seems like the NFC is 2 or 3 teams at the top and then a huge drop. Whereas the AFC, those middle, I don't want to say middle, but like tier 1B teams, Miami, San Diego, LA, Jacksonville, et cetera. Those teams are still really, really good, and I think that's going to be exciting. What do you make of the rookie quarterbacks? Well, they all struggle. I did a parlay that they would all lose because I assumed that would be the case. I mean, they're all in different situations. I don't think Bryce Young has a chance. I mean, I think that team is not situated where he's going to have a shot this year. C.J. Stroud, similarly, although, they showed a little fight. Anthony Richardson, I think, to be honest with you, I've been way down on Anthony Richardson since he was in college. He actually played better than I thought, to be honest. But then at the end of the game, it was very much like Florida. He just wasn't able to kind of finish it. All 3 of those guys are going to struggle all year. And if Will Levis played, he would struggle. Think about it. How many times does a rookie really come in and play really well? I know Brock Purdy did, but he's got 1 million pieces around him. But on teams like that, it's always going to be tough. And so I wasn't surprised those guys all had difficulties. What do you make of Burrow's struggles and staying in that division as well? What do you make of Lamar Jackson? I thought he looked terrible. He did. But I will say about both those guys, you're talking about guys who don't really play in the preseason. And so it's a little different. I mean, the Bengals have lost the first game of the season, I think every year Burrow's been there, right? They've lost 4 of the last 5 to the Browns. I'm not sure off the top of my head who they play next week, but talk to me after next week. I mean, if he looks that bad again, then I think you start worrying. But remember, I think the year they went to the Super Bowl, I think they started 1-4. Yeah. So I'm not overly concerned, but they did look really bad. Lamar, weather's nasty, right? Like it's nasty weather. He's a guy that the weather's going to affect more than a lot of people. So I don't think a lot about any of those. The only teams that I would be, if I'm the Steelers, I would be worried if I was a Steelers fan, just because I really had high hopes for them and they were never in that game. The same is true about the Giants, but the difference with the Giants is, remember, they went all the way down the field. They have 3 stupid plays. They're down 7-0, and it just slips away. And when you're down 17-0 in 8 minutes and pouring rain, like I can see how that could kind of slip away. So I'm not going to give up on them completely. But I do wonder about the Steelers because I thought the Steelers were going to be good, and they were miserable in that game. Yep. And so that would worry me a little bit.
Yeah, I thought the Steelers were going to win that game.
I did too. I picked them, and they just weren't competitive. There were only 2 games where I didn't feel like the games were competitive, and they were not competitive. I'll give the Giants a little bit of a pass because of the way it played out, and they haven't beaten the Cowboys at home in a long time. So I'll give them a pass, but I'm not really willing to give Pittsburgh a pass. We'll see what happens next week.
Matt Jones, ESPN Radio. You can hear him on Sundays leading up to all the NFL action. Kentucky Sports Radio. Wrestlers this Wednesday, Netflix. Did I leave anything out now, Matt?
No, you got it all, and I mean it. I think if people want, again, you're talking to a guy who hasn't seen it, but I do know what happened. You're going to be kind of amazed at all the stuff that happened during those 3 months.
Okay.
And Greg Whiteley is literally, I think he's the best sports director there is. I don't think anybody does sports as well as Greg does. So I think everybody's going to like it. Watch the first episode, and I bet you're hooked.
Well, listen, I don't think I've ever been to Ohio or Kentucky for that matter. But if I am ever in that area, I'd like to come.
How have you never been? Wait a minute. How have you never been to Kentucky or Ohio?
Like, I'm an East Coast
you're
guy.
Not that far away. You're in Florida.
Oh, no, but you got to understand, to get out of Florida from South Florida, you got to drive 8 hours straight up north. It's impossible to get out of here.
That is the most parochial thing I've ever heard in my life. Get out there. I've been to 49 of the 50 states. Oregon is the only state I haven't been to. There's a lot of America to see. I know Miami's beautiful and everybody's hot and all that. But you know what? There's another part of the world. Okay? Go see it and get some adventure in your life, Zaslow.
Great job, Matt. I'm looking forward. Hopefully one day I can come out to OVW. I think it sounds, and I'll probably see it. Probably looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hope you will. Good to talk to you.